Jack wiped his hands on a greasy rag and glanced around the small cantina. The spaceport was crowded tonight as usual. Ships landed and took off in a constant rhythm, and travelers from all corners of the galaxy filled the tables. Jack was just a mechanic moonlighting as a bartender, hoping for a quiet night and maybe a tip or two. He sighed. Quiet nights rarely happened here. The clanging of plates, the hum of alien chatter, and the occasional barked orders from spaceport guards made it impossible. He rubbed his eyes and poured a fresh drink. Then the door opened. Jack looked up and froze. A tall figure entered, moving with grace and confidence. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered softly, a pale greenish gold, and her eyes were deep and bright, almost like liquid emerald. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, catching the dim lights of the cantina. She wore clothes that looked ceremonial but elegant, decorated with intricate patterns that seemed alive. Everyone else in the cantina seemed to notice her too, falling silent for a moment. Jack didn't blame them. She radiated authority, but also something else. A kind of quiet urgency. She walked to the bar and smiled politely at Jack. "I need a drink," she said, her voice soft but firm. There was a strange accent in her speech, not like anything Jack had heard before. Jack hurried to serve her, hands a little shaky. "Of course, ma'am. What can I get you?" She placed a small coin on the counter. "Something strong," she said, her eyes scanning the room nervously. "I do not have time to linger." Jack nodded, grabbed a bottle from the shelf, and poured a drink. As he slid it across the bar, she gave him a slight nod of thanks. He smiled faintly. "Here you go, and, nice tip," he said, glancing at the coin. She shook her head. "That is not for the drink." Her eyes looked directly at his, and for a moment, Jack felt as if she could see everything about him. His small apartment, his tools, his quiet life. It was unnerving. Then she leaned closer. "I need your help," she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. "My help?" "Yes. I need you to care for my son." Jack blinked. "Wait. What?" "I do not have time to explain fully," she said, her eyes flicking to the door as if she feared someone would follow. "He is my child, my prince. I cannot return home safely while holding him. You must protect him." Jack laughed nervously, but it quickly died. This was not a joke. She was serious. "Your son? An alien prince?" "Yes. He is young, fragile, and important. Many will seek him. You must hide him, protect him, keep him safe." Jack swallowed hard. His life had been quiet. He fixed ships, poured drinks, and occasionally argued with customers over overdue bills. He had never imagined caring for an alien child, especially a prince. Why me?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Because you are human. You are simple, clever, and unpredictable. They will not expect a human to be involved." Jack rubbed his face. He tried to imagine this. A normal night, maybe a few credits now turned into, what, kidnapping, intergalactic politics, a royal alien baby? His mind spun. Before he could say anything else, she handed him a small, glowing pod. "He sleeps inside. Only open when you are alone and ready. Trust yourself. I will return soon. But do not wait for me to guide you." Jack looked at the pod. It pulsed softly, warm to the touch. Inside, he could see a tiny shape moving. It was small, delicate, and strangely beautiful. He realized his heart was already racing. This was real. You expect me to just take care of him?" he asked, voice trembling. "Yes," she said, straightening her back. "You will feed him, protect him, and guide him until I return. You are his guardian now." Jack's mouth went dry. I don't know anything about babies, let alone alien babies. She nodded. That is why I chose you. You will learn. You must trust your instincts. You are human. That is enough. Before Jack could argue further, she turned and left. Her silver hair swayed as she walked toward the door, her presence leaving the cantina feeling emptier and quieter than before. Patrons murmured, glancing at Jack as if he had just been handed a treasure of great importance. He stared at the pod. Slowly, cautiously, he lifted the lid. A soft light spilled out, and a small, fragile face peeked up at him. The prince's eyes were wide, curious, and intelligent. He made a tiny noise, a cooing sound, unlike anything Jack had heard before. Jack froze. The baby was alive, real, and somehow it already seemed to recognize him. His heart pounded, and a strange mix of fear and awe filled him. He knew one thing immediately: his life would never be the same. He had signed up for a quiet night at a cantina. Now he was the guardian of an alien prince, and his choices could change the fate of an empire. Jack took a deep breath. He set the pod on the counter, gently lifted the child, and felt the small weight in his arms. He looked down at those intelligent, glowing eyes, and a strange warmth spread through him. This was more than responsibility. It was trust. The cantina faded around him. The noise, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, all of it disappeared. All he could see was the child in his arms. He was small, fragile, and yet powerful in a way Jack could not yet understand. Jack whispered softly, almost to himself, "Okay, kid, let's figure this out together." He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know how to care for a child with unknown powers. He didn't know how to survive the dangers that would surely come. But for the first time in his life, Jack felt like he was part of something bigger than himself, something extraordinary. And in that moment, the ordinary human bartender began his journey toward becoming the protector of a prince, and perhaps the hero of a story no one could have imagined. Jack sat on the edge of his small cot, staring down at the glowing pod. The child inside had wiggled and cooed softly ever since he arrived. Jack was still trying to wrap his head around the fact that he was now responsible for an alien prince, a real one. The cantina had been busy earlier, but now, in the quiet of his tiny quarters, Jack finally had a moment to think. His hand shook slightly as he lifted the baby from the pod. The prince's skin was soft, almost warm, and his tiny fingers reached out curiously. Jack felt a strange mix of fear and awe. "Okay, kid," Jack whispered. "Let's see what you need." He had no guidebooks, no instructions, and certainly no experience with alien babies. He remembered the small amount the princess had said. "You will learn. Trust your instincts." That was not exactly a manual. Jack started with the basics. Feeding seemed simple enough, but when he opened the small container of nutrient gel, the prince reacted instantly. His eyes glowed faintly, and the gel floated up a few inches before settling back. Jack jumped back. "Whoa! Okay, you do that?" he asked nervously. The baby giggled softly, and Jack realized it was some kind of natural power. The prince could manipulate energy, but he had no idea how strong or dangerous it could be. Jack decided to be careful. He improvised, putting a soft cloth barrier around the feeding area. The prince, still curious, touched it with a tiny hand. The cloth rippled, but nothing dangerous happened. Jack breathed a sigh of relief. As the hours passed, Jack discovered more unusual things. The baby seemed to respond to his voice. When Jack hummed a quiet tune, the prince's glowing eyes dimmed slightly, almost like he was calm. When Jack walked around, the baby reached out as if he wanted to explore but couldn't yet move properly. Jack realized something important. The prince trusted him. Even though he was tiny and alien, he recognized Jack as his protector. That realization brought a new sense of responsibility. Suddenly, a sharp sound from outside startled Jack. He peered out the small window of his quarters. A patrol drone from the spaceport floated past, scanning the area. Jack froze. He remembered the princess's words. Many will seek him. Hide him. He gently placed the prince back in the pod and closed it. The soft glow inside made the pod look like it was alive. Jack took a deep breath. If anyone knew the prince was here, it could mean trouble. Not just for him, but for the baby, too. Jack's first night as a guardian was restless. Every sound outside made him tense. But the prince seemed calm, almost asleep in his pod, glowing softly in the dark. Jack sat beside him, thinking about what kind of life he had just been thrown into. By morning, Jack realized he needed a plan. He couldn't just sit in his quarters and hope no one found the prince. He had to learn quickly about hiding, about caring, and maybe even about the baby's strange powers. He made a list. Step 1, keep the prince safe. Step 2, feed him. Step 3, learn what he could about the baby's abilities. Step 4, figure out how to communicate with the princess. That last part seemed the hardest, because she had vanished almost as quickly as she had appeared. Jack tried another feeding. This time, he let the prince touch the nutrient gel. The baby giggled, and a small spark of energy jumped between his fingers and the gel. Jack jumped back again. He quickly wrapped the area with soft cloth, creating a small safe zone. You're powerful, Jack whispered, but we'll figure it out. Slowly. Hours passed. Jack started noticing patterns. The prince seemed sensitive to sound, reacting to his voice, footsteps, and even the rhythm of his heartbeat. Jack hummed a tune, and the baby's small body relaxed. He realized this was more than a child responding. This was communication, a way of connecting. By the evening, Jack was exhausted. He had spent almost the entire day learning the baby's needs, feeding him, and keeping him safe. And yet, Jack had barely slept. The prince's tiny hands twitched in his arms as if sensing the tension in the room. The city outside his small apartment was alive with the usual noise of ships and traders, but Jack's mind was focused on one thing: keeping the prince safe. Earlier, the flickering message from Princess Liara had warned him. Someone knew the child existed. Someone dangerous. And Jack knew that warning was not empty. He packed a small bag, careful not to disturb the baby whose glowing eyes watched him quietly. He placed the child in his arms and held him close. Jack's heart beat faster. He had no plan for where to go, only instincts and hope. The streets outside were crowded, and Jack used that to his advantage. He weaved through the crowd, ducking behind stalls and market vendors. The prince cooed softly, reaching for Jack's face. Jack whispered back, "Stay calm, kid. Just a little further." As they moved, Jack noticed shadowy figures at the edges of the crowd. They were tall, wearing dark cloaks that hid their faces, moving in a way that was too deliberate to be coincidence. His instincts screamed danger. He quickened his pace, slipping into a narrow alley. The alley was tight and winding. Jack's mechanical skills helped him find small ledges and hidden paths through the city. The baby seemed to sense the urgency, holding onto Jack's shirt as they moved. Every so often, Jack glanced back. The figures were still following, but Jack had learned that unpredictability was his greatest weapon. After what felt like hours, they reached a docking area for small transport ships. Jack didn't have money for one, but he had skills. He spotted an old freighter ship that looked abandoned. Carefully, he climbed aboard and slipped inside. The baby's tiny hands glowed faintly as if reacting to the ship's energy. Jack realized the prince might be more powerful than he had imagined. Jack started the ship, fingers moving quickly over the controls. Sparks flew from exposed wires, but the ship hummed to life. They lifted off just as the shadowy figures reached the dock. Jack piloted the freighter through narrow lanes of shipping traffic, using tight turns and sudden bursts of speed to avoid pursuit. The prince seemed to enjoy the ride, giggling softly, his small energy bursts lighting up the cabin. Jack laughed, nervously. "You like that, huh? Well, we better get used to this. It's not going to be boring anymore." They left the city behind, moving into the asteroid belt that surrounded the trading hub. Jack knew the belt could hide them, providing cover from anyone following. The baby wriggled in his arms, reaching toward floating tools and wires in the cabin. Jack realized he had to be careful. The prince could unintentionally cause damage. Hours passed as they navigated through the rocks. Jack spoke softly to the baby, telling him about Earth, about simple things he remembered from childhood, and about how he would protect him no matter what. The baby's glowing eyes seemed to follow every word as if he understood more than a child should. Suddenly, alarms blared in the cabin. Sensors detected another ship approaching at high speed. Jack's heart sank. He looked at the prince, whose tiny hands glowed brighter. The child sensed danger. Jack realized then that the prince could somehow detect threats. Jack took a deep breath. He remembered the tips he had learned from fixing ships under pressure. He pulled levers, twisted knobs, and rerouted power to the shields. The approaching ship fired, sending blasts that rattled the freighter. Jack dodged and weaved through asteroids, using them as cover. The baby cooed and waved his hands, releasing small bursts of energy that pushed the enemy blasts off course. Jack's jaw dropped. "You're helping me," he whispered. The prince seemed to understand. Even in fear, he had instinctively protected them. The enemy ship fired again, but Jack had a plan. Using his knowledge of mechanics, he overcharged the freighter's engines briefly, causing a sudden jump through the asteroid field. The pursuing ship was too slow to follow. They escaped into open space, the stars stretching endlessly around them. Jack slumped back in his seat, exhausted but relieved. The prince yawned and curled up in his arms, glowing softly. Jack realized how much he had come to care for this tiny alien. He wasn't just protecting a child. He was forming a bond that went deeper than words. He whispered, "We did it, kid. We survived our first fight." The prince responded with a small, happy noise, reaching out to touch Jack's face. Jack smiled, feeling a warmth he had never known before. As they drifted through space, Jack thought about their next move. They needed a safe place to hide, somewhere the enemies could not track them easily. He remembered a remote planet, barely charted, with abandoned mining stations. It wasn't luxurious, but it would be safe, for now. Jack set a course, navigating the freighter carefully. He watched the baby sleep in his arms, glowing faintly under the cabin lights. Even though danger lurked in the galaxy, Jack felt a strange sense of calm. He realized he could do this. He could protect the prince, and, more than that, he knew something incredible. Being human gave him an advantage. The enemies expected only advanced tactics and alien power. But Jack had creativity, instinct, and courage. He had something they could not predict. Hours later, the remote planet came into view. Jagged rocks, sparse vegetation, and a small abandoned station waited for them. Jack guided the freighter down carefully, landing softly. The prince stirred, sensing a new place. Jack smiled. "Almost home, kid." "Well, home for now." He carried the prince to the station, setting him down carefully. The baby looked around, eyes wide and curious, then cooed happily. Jack laughed quietly. "Looks like you like it, me too, little guy." Jack realized that the adventure was just beginning. They had survived their first real danger, but there would be more. He had a long journey ahead, learning to care for the prince and defending him from those who wanted to take him. He looked down at the tiny, glowing face and whispered, "We're in this together, and we'll figure it out, no matter what." For the first time, Jack felt truly alive. He wasn't just a mechanic, a bartender, or an ordinary human. He was a protector, and nothing in the galaxy could change that. The remote planet was quiet. Dust swirled gently across jagged rocks, and the abandoned mining station stood like a forgotten relic of the past. Jack carried the small glowing pod inside, careful not to jostle the prince. The baby cooed softly, tiny fingers reaching for his shirt. Jack smiled. "This'll be your home for a while, little guy," he said. "Safe, quiet, at least for now." He spent the next few hours exploring the station, making sure it was secure. The walls were old, the air recycled poorly, but Jack didn't mind. He had faced danger before, and this was nothing compared to the enemy ship they had just Evaded. He patched a few holes, tightened some panels, and set up a small bed for the prince. As the baby stirred and reached for him, Jack realized something important. This wasn't just about survival. It was about connection, about trust. The prince needed him, not just to protect him physically, but to feel safe, to feel human care. Jack began teaching himself about the baby's strange abilities. When the prince cooed, tiny sparks of energy danced around his fingers. When Jack hummed a quiet tune, the energy calmed. Jack experimented carefully, keeping a soft cloth between the sparks and anything that could break. The prince responded, to his tone, his touch, and even his heartbeat. Hours passed like this, filled with small experiments, soft hums, and gentle guidance. Jack noticed something remarkable. The baby seemed to understand him in ways that went beyond language. A glance, a small gesture, a coo. It was enough to communicate. Jack realized that human intuition was working in ways even the aliens might not expect. The prince had instincts, but so did Jack. Together they were learning, adapting, surviving. Suddenly, the airlock hissed. Jack froze. Someone or something was outside. He held the baby close, his mind racing. Carefully, he peered through the small viewport. Two figures in dark scout suits moved across the rocky surface. Jack's heart pounded. They were clearly looking for him. For the prince. He pulled the baby closer. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We've handled worse. Trust me." Jack moved, quickly but quietly. He activated the station's old security system, setting a few traps and alarms to slow any intruders. The scouts moved closer, unaware that the station was anything more than an empty building. Jack held his breath as they paused near the entrance. The prince stirred in his arms, glowing faintly. Jack realized something. The baby wasn't just a passive observer. His energy could help. Carefully, Jack guided his hands, showing the prince how to focus the glow. A gentle pulse of energy radiated outwards, enough to trigger one of the old sensors. A soft alarm beeped, startling the scouts. They looked around, confused. Jack whispered, "Good job, kid. You're learning fast." The scouts retreated slightly, checking their equipment. Jack knew he had only bought a few minutes. He grabbed the prince and slipped into a hidden maintenance tunnel he had discovered earlier. The tunnel was narrow and dark, but Jack was confident. He had spent years crawling through tight ship compartments. This was easy by comparison. Once inside, he set the baby down on a soft cloth. The prince looked up at him, eyes wide and glowing faintly. Jack smiled. "See? Nothing to worry about. We'll be safe here for a while." As they settled, Jack thought about the lessons he was learning. This wasn't just about hiding or fighting. It was about understanding, about using human qualities, creativity, empathy, and courage to protect. Jack had spent days preparing the abandoned station for defense. He patched weak walls, hid the freighter, and created small traps for anyone who might try to enter. The prince sat in his arms, cooing softly, oblivious to the tension in the air. Jack knew it was only a matter of time before the rival faction returned. The scouts they had encountered earlier had likely reported their location. This time, the attackers would be stronger, faster, and more organized. But Jack was ready, not with weapons or alien tech. He was ready with his human ingenuity. He adjusted the lighting in the station, creating shadows to hide the entrances. He lined hallways with old tools and panels that could fall or shift if triggered. Each corridor became a maze for anyone unfamiliar with the layout. The prince's small glowing energy was contained in soft mats, ready to be used to distract or warn if danger came. As Jack worked, he spoke quietly to the baby. "Okay, kid. Soon we might have visitors. Remember what we practiced. Stay calm, trust me." The prince's glowing eyes flickered as if acknowledging his words. Then, without warning, alarms blared from the freighter outside. Jack's heart leapt. They were here. The enemy faction had found them. He hurriedly picked up the prince, carrying him to a side corridor. Through the small viewport, Jack saw ships hovering just above the station, Alien soldiers disembarking with weapons drawn. He gritted his teeth. All right, let's show them what humans can do. The first soldier entered the station. Jack was ready. He triggered a hidden panel, sending a pile of metal crates toppling down. The soldier stumbled and fell, giving Jack a clear path. He moved silently, guiding the prince away from the danger while keeping an eye on every corridor. More soldiers entered, cautious now. Jack used quick thinking. He led them into a room where the walls were old and fragile. A small push here, a lever there, and the ceiling rumbled. The soldiers froze. Jack smiled grimly. They hadn't expected traps from a human. The prince cooed, tiny hands glowing faintly. Jack realized he could use this to their advantage. He set up the baby near a panel of wires, creating a safe barrier. When the enemy approached, the prince's energy surged, triggering a flash that temporarily blinded them. Jack had learned to control the energy enough to use it as a tool rather than a hazard. Good job, kid, Jack whispered. Now let's finish this. The soldiers regrouped, realizing they were being outsmarted. Jack knew they would attempt a direct assault soon. He grabbed a few old mechanical tools and fashioned simple distractions, spinning gears, falling panels, and noisemakers. Every move bought time, keeping the prince safe. The final wave entered, more determined than before. Jack took a deep breath. He had no training in combat, no alien weapons, but he had strategy, creativity, and a deep desire to protect. And humans had something many aliens underestimated: unpredictability. He led the soldiers into a long corridor with a loose floor panel. As they advanced, Jack triggered the panel, causing them to stumble and fall. He used the moment to move the prince to a secure side room. The baby's glowing hands radiated softly, as if sensing the danger and reinforcing Jack's determination. The enemy leader entered last, scanning the area with suspicion. Jack, hiding in the shadows, threw a small light device toward the ceiling. Sparks flew and the leader flinched. Jack used the distraction to leap out, knocking the leader off balance and pushing him into a pile of crates. The prince cooed in delight, and Jack felt a surge of pride. Finally, the attackers retreated. They had underestimated the human guardian and the tiny alien prince. Jack watched them leave, breathing heavily. The station was quiet again, except for the soft cooing of the prince in his arms. Jack sank to the floor, holding the baby close. "We did it," he whispered. "We really did it." The prince's glowing eyes met his, and Jack felt a deep, unspoken connection. They had survived together, relying on trust, clever thinking, and courage. He thought about Princess Liara. She had trusted him with the prince, believing that a human could protect him when others might fail. And now, Jack had proven that trust right. He realized that humanity's greatest strengths were not in power or weapons, but in creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to protect life, no matter the cost. Jack looked around the station. It was battered, scratched, and full of evidence of their fight. But it was also safe. For now. The prince snuggled closer, glowing softly in Jack's arms. Jack smiled. He had faced enemies stronger and faster than him, yet they had triumphed because he had used what humans did best: cleverness, resourcefulness, and heart. He whispered softly, "You're going to be okay, little guy. And so are we." For the first time since the journey began, Jack allowed himself to relax. He had faced a real threat, and together, he and the prince had survived. The experience had taught him more than he could have imagined, not just about protecting someone, but about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of danger and wonder. The baby stirred and reached for Jack's face. Jack laughed quietly, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. "We make a good team, huh?" he said. The prince cooed, a sound filled with trust and happiness. Jack knew their journey was far from over. More dangers would come. More enemies would seek the prince. But he also knew one thing clearly. He would protect this child with everything he had, and the galaxy would not see a human back down when it came to defending life. Outside the station, the stars stretched endlessly, silent, witnesses to the bond between a human and an alien prince. Inside, Jack held the child close, feeling a strength he had never known before. This was more than survival. This was connection, trust, courage, humanity, and Jack knew that no matter what came next, he and the prince were ready. Together, they could face anything. The battle was over. The rival faction had retreated, their ships vanishing into the stars. The remote station was quiet again, save for the soft cooing of the alien prince nestled in Jack's arms. He looked down at the tiny glowing face and felt a warmth in his chest he had never known. Jack had been through more in the past few days than in all the years of his ordinary life. He had protected a child, outsmarted enemies, and survived dangers that would have crushed many. Yet the most remarkable thing was the bond he now shared with the prince. He was no longer just a human bartender or mechanic, he was a guardian, a protector, and a father figure. Jack adjusted the baby in his arms as a faint shimmer in the air signaled an incoming ship. He stiffened. Could it be another threat? The ship landed gently outside the station and the ramp extended. A familiar figure stepped down, Princess Liara. She moved quickly, her eyes scanning the station before resting on Jack. Relief flooded her expression. "Jack," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude and emotion. "You have done more than I could have hoped. He is safe because of you." Jack smiled faintly, holding the prince a little closer. "He's amazing," he said. "And you trusted me with him. I didn't fail." Liara knelt beside him, her eyes meeting. "The babies. No, Jack, you didn't fail. You have exceeded all expectations. I knew humans were clever, but you have shown courage and heart that few could match." Jack felt a little embarrassed, but the praise warmed him. He had learned quickly. He had adapted, and he had discovered that humans, though simple by alien standards, had something the galaxy often underestimated: the ability to think, care, and act with unpredictability. Liara reached out to take the prince gently. The baby cooed and held his tiny hands toward Jack, then relaxed as Liara held him. Jack watched, understanding the connection between mother and child. But he also realized something else. The prince looked at him with trust and love. He had a place in this child's life. Liara looked up at Jack, her eyes serious now. "Jack, I know this is unusual, but I need to ask you something important." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "I cannot be with him all the time," she said. "There are duties, responsibilities, dangers I cannot control. But he needs a guardian, someone to care for him, guide him, and protect him, someone he trusts. I want you to stay, to be his father figure." Jack's mouth went dry. He stared at her. "You mean it?" Liara nodded. "I trust you. He trusts you. I cannot imagine anyone better for this role than you, Jack. You are human, and that may be exactly what he needs." Jack felt a mix of fear, pride, and determination. He had never imagined his life would lead him here. A human, caring for an alien prince, forming a family across worlds. It was extraordinary. And yet, as he looked down at the glowing child, in his arms he knew he would not hesitate. I'll do it," Jack said finally. "I'll stay. I'll protect him. I'll be there for him, whatever happens." Liara smiled, a mixture of relief and happiness. "Then it is decided. You are part of this family now, not by blood but by choice, by trust, by love." The prince cooed again, tiny hands reaching, for both Jack and Liara. Jack felt the warmth of family in a way he had never known. He realized that life had given him an unexpected gift, a chance to be more than himself, to be human, and yet more than human. Over the next few days, Jack settled into his new role. He learned more about the prince's powers, helping him control the glowing energy and guiding him safely through play and exploration. The baby laughed, cooed, and reached for Jack often, forming a bond that grew stronger with every passing hour. Jack and Liara worked together, sharing responsibilities. She taught him